Now that we have an information about the cheapest and the most expensive provider in the California state for treating degenerative diseases, we can also find the providers for any other state or any other disease by simply changing the filters. Suppose we want to create a business report of this, since we already know that this result belongs to the California state, we can put all this data in a new sheet. In Excel, you can see this plus sign at the bottom side. If you click on this, a new sheet will be created, which will be empty by default. We can rename this by double clicking on it and give it any name like California Degenerative Disease, just to understand that this sheet contains information about degenerative disease provider in the California state. If we right click on this, we'll get multiple options like insert sheet, which will insert another sheet, or delete sheet, rename sheet that we have already seen, move or copy. So we can move or copy this sheet within our workbook or to other workbooks. View code is fairly advanced concept, so we are going to cover it later. Next is protect sheet. So if you want your sheet to be password protected, then we can use this option. Next one is tab color. If we want to make the sheet distinctive, we can provide it some other color. For example, it's a yellow, and you can see this sheet is now decorated with the yellow color. Another option is hide. So if I click on this hide, then this sheet will be hidden, and if I want to unhide it, I can simply go to the previous sheet and click on unhide. And once I click OK, the sheet will be visible again. Next option is select all sheets. So if we want to perform some actions on all the sheets, we can use this option and all the sheets will be selected. Autofill, this option is not relevant here. Let me delete sheet 2. Now, in order to copy our data to another sheet, we can either select the data column wise or row wise. But there is another way of selecting all the data is by using this option, which is present between the columns and the rows. So if I click here, then all the filtered data present in the sheet currently will be selected, and if I press Command C on Mac or Control C on Windows, or if I simply go here, then the data will be copied. And if I go to next sheet, click here, that which will select all the rows and columns, and click on this paste option, then the data will be pasted. You may notice that the filters and the formatting is now gone, but only the filtered data is copied here. Now we have our filtered data in a new sheet. I'll start removing the columns that we don't need. For example, we don't need this column called provider state, since we already know that this data completely belongs to the California state. So if I right click on this column, then we will get multiple options. Before deleting, let's look at these options first. So the first option is cut. This option will simply copy the content of the column and remove this column. The next option, copy, is going to copy all the content of this column, which we can paste somewhere else. Paste option, paste columns data. So let me copy this data. If I go somewhere here, right click on it and click on paste, then it is going to paste the data. On the other hand, if I right click here one more time and click on paste spatial, then you can see we are getting multiple options of pasting a data. For example, is there any special condition that we want to keep track of while pasting the data? We are going to talk about these advanced features in our upcoming sessions. So suppose if some formula has been applied to the original data, and if we want to keep those formulas while pasting the data, then we'll select this option and the data that will be pasted will keep the original formulas. Next option is insert. So if I want to insert another column, then I can choose this option. If I click on insert, then you can see another column has been inserted to the left of current column. Next option is delete. So if I want to delete this whole cell, I'm going to use this column and the cell will be deleted completely. On the other hand, if I don't want to delete the cell, but I want to clear the content only, then I will select this option and it is simply going to clear all the data. Next option is format cells. This we are going to talk in detail in our upcoming session. And the next option is column width. This option is used to provide a specific width to the column. For example, if I give the value 14 here and if I click on OK, then the width of this column will become 14. And this is similar to simply dragging the column. So this option is used to provide a specific value to the column's width. Sometimes we need multiple columns of same width size. So in that case, we can simply select those columns and either can change the width by dragging those columns or simply right click, choose this option of column width and give a particular width, let's say 25. And now the width of all these three columns will be 25. Next two options are hide and unhide that we have already seen with the sheets. So just like sheets, we can simply hide the columns. For example, I want to hide these two columns, then I can simply click on hide after selecting these two columns and the columns will be hidden. If I want to unhide, then I have to select the columns before and after those columns, and if I go in the middle of this and right click, then I will get an option unhide, which is simply going to unhide the hidden columns. Now we are going to get rid of the columns that we don't need. The first column is provider ID. Since we are not interested in provider ID, we are going to delete it. Next is provider zip code. Again, we can delete this column. Next one is provider street address. We are not interested with the street address as of now, but we might need it later. So we are going to, instead of deleting, we are going to hide this column. And similarly, we can hide these two columns as well. Before hiding these columns, let's analyze these columns. As we can see, in the average total payments column, there's a large variation among the values. That is, the pricing is not uniform. Similarly, in case of average Medicare payments, the pricing seems to be distributed to a larger range. In case of average covered charges, we have already seen that there is not a large variance in data. And similar is the case with average covered charges. But if we take a closer look, then we'll see that the variance is happening mostly because of the decimal values. If we remove those values, then we can see that the values are fairly close to each other. So let's try to remove the decimal values in the average covered charges column. So if I click on this column and select all the values, and if I go to this option where it says increase decimal and the next one says decrease decimal, and if I try to click on decrease decimal option, then nothing will happen. The reason being that along with the numerical values, we have also selected the text value. So we have to select only the numerical ones. One way is to select any cell, press shift button and down button, and it will start selecting the values. But there is a better way, there is a shortcut to select all these values. Before that, let's try to understand how to use keyboard in Excel. Right now we are in this cell. If I press left, the cursor will move left. If I press right, the cursor will move right. Similar is the case with up and down. Now, if I press shift button and then press left, then it will start selecting all the values to the left. Similarly, if I press shift and start pressing right button, it will start selecting the values in the right hand. And so will be the case with the up button and down button. Now, instead of pressing shift button, if I press control and then press down button, then the cursor will move to the bottommost cell. Similarly, if I'm here and if I press Control and press up button, then the cursor will move to the top cell. Again, if I place my cursor here and press Control left button, then the cursor will move to the leftmost cell. From this behavior, we can observe that pressing Control and the direction key, which is up, down, left or right, the cursor moves to the farthest columns in the respective direction. Similarly, if we press Shift key and the direction keys, then it selects the data in that direction. So now if we press Ctrl plus Shift and down key, then it is going to select all the rows until the last value. Similarly, if I press cursor here and want to select all the values in the upper direction, I'm going to press Shift, Ctrl and up key, then it is going to select all the values in the upper direction. Similar will be the case with left or right. An interesting thing is, if I select these 4 rows and now if I press Ctrl, Shift and left key, then you can see it is going to follow the same phenomenon. Coming back to our original problem, we want to remove all the decimal values in this particular column. So I'm going to place the cursor in the second row and I am going to press Ctrl plus Shift plus down key, and it is going to select all the numerical values in this particular column. Then if I go to the section decrease decimal, and if I click on it, then you can see it has removed 1 decimal place. If I press this option one more time, then you can see it has removed the second decimal place as well. Similarly, we can perform this operation on these 2 columns as well. So first of all, I'm going to place my cursor here. I'm going to press Shift plus right in order to select these 2 rows, and then Ctrl plus Shift plus down so that it will select all the values until the bottom in both these columns. Then I'm going to go to the section decrease decimal, and since both these columns contains maximum 2 decimal values, so I'm going to press this option twice, 1, 2. As you can see, all the decimal values have been removed. So now if you want to find out which provider charges least in the, let's say, San Diego city of California for the degenerative nervous system disorders disease, then we can filter all the values by selecting the city as San Diego. We are going to add little bit more formatting to these columns. First, we are going to add commas to the numerical values. Sometimes it is little bit confusing to understand whether this value is 2200 or 22,000. Adding commas will help in identifying these numbers in a better way. Before doing that, let me zoom in the sheet for better visibility. Next, we are going to select all the values present in these 3 columns. So I'm going to place the cursor at this cell, press Shift button and then right key. So these 3 cells are selected. I'm going to press Shift plus Control plus down key, and it is going to select all the values in these 3 columns except the headings. Now, in order to add comma separated values, we have to go to this function, which is comma style, and if I click on it, you can see commas are automatically added in standard notation. But as per the norms, Excel has also added the decimal values. So we can easily remove them by again going to the decrease decimal symbol or decrease decimal formula and click it twice, and it is going to remove all the decimal values. We are going to add one more thing, which is adding the dollar symbol. For this, we'll be going to the accounting section, which is this one. Click on the down arrow and going to select the dollar symbol. Now the dollar symbol that we are adding now using this option is a different one than the previous dollar symbol. This time Even after adding the dollar symbol, the Excel will consider these values as numeric values only. So, even after adding the dollar symbol, we will be able to perform all the numerical operations, number-based mathematical operations on these cells. Now our report looks much cleaner and concise. But when I scroll it down, sometimes I'm confused that which column belongs to which heading. So I want first row to remain even after scrolling the content. For this, we can use freeze option provided by Excel. So I'm going to navigate to the view section. In that, I'm going to select the option freeze top row. What this option will do is, it is simply going to freeze the first row, the top row, so that even if we scroll this content, the first row will be visible throughout the screen all the time. Right now, if I'm scrolling our content, you can see that the top row is not visible. But as soon as I select this option, freeze top row, then the first row will be freezed. Now, if I scroll the content, you can see that the top row is visible. Similarly, if I want to freeze the first column, when I'm scrolling the content horizontally, I can select freeze first column. So right now, if I scroll from left to right horizontally, then the first column is not visible. But if I select freeze first column, then you can see now if I try to scroll the content horizontally, first column is visible all the time. In the next session, we are going to talk about conditional formatting, which is a very important topic used for advanced report preparation. With that, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.